Our next presenter is dressed the way, now you got to imagine this, when I was in high school and I lived on a farm in Illinois, I took care of all the livestock and I dressed this way every day. Matter of fact, I was telling somebody today, Matt, that I had 3 layers on because typically the wind chill was 20 below. And so we're not there yet here, but still cold is cold. We asked if Representative Matt Koch would come on and talk about a bill we've touched on here a few times today. But first, let me say he represents Bourbon, part of Fayette and Nicholas and Bath counties. He's a champion, and here's where we want to really put that emphasis on the historical horse racing bill. We want to thank him for the work that he did on Senate Bill 120, and just ask you, if you would, to provide us some comments on the overview of the next of the issue and then the next steps going forward. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, good morning, and thank you all for having me on here. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm coming to you straight from the farm. Farm work never stops, no matter, it's 24/7, no matter what the weather. So we're out here feeding horses and throwing out water tanks and getting everything moving forward. And please tell Representative Santoro that I support his user fee. That's something we really got to work hard on.
It's his bandwidth.
Here today to talk about historical horse racing, Senate Bill 120. Started over in the Senate with Senator John Schickel, and very, very important bill to this industry, very important bill to Central Kentucky. And let me first start off with maybe telling you a little bit what historical horse racing is and how it came into play. It's exactly what the name says. It's gambling on historical horse racing. So they've taken races that have been run in the past. That's the historical part. And then you put them on the machine. And some people would say that it looks like a slot machine. And we're able to gamble and drive our purses up. Why was that important for Central Kentucky, and how did that come into play? Well, all the states around us started moving towards casinos, started moving to full-blown slots machines, driving their purse structure up. As their purses are going up, we found that our racing was leaving the state of Kentucky. We could not keep up with what the other states were doing. And so they were thriving. This is 2008, 2009 timeframe. As other states around us were starting to boom, Central Kentucky, the horse capital of the world, we were struggling. We had racetracks that on the brink of disaster, not being able to go forward. Kentucky Downs, Ellis, Turfway Park, in absolute trouble. And the Horse Racing Commission threw us a lifeline at the time, over a decade ago, with this thing at the time was known as instant racing. I think everybody was maybe a little skeptical when it first came out, and we didn't really know how good it could be for us. But as it came out, it was gangbusters. Our purses went up 102%. That was so just absolutely crucial for us. When you look at a place like Kentucky Downs, and all of a sudden they're running maiden special weights for 120,000. Purses at Turfway Park jumped from running a maiden special weight from 17,000 to 30,000, and just we saw an overall 102% growth. And with that lifeline and with that purse growth, we saw the entire industry grow. This wasn't just at the racetracks. This just wasn't, the circuit surviving and doing well. The breeding industry started to survive. Our numbers actually started to grow up. With the numbers growing up, we saw the number of jobs in the industry starting to grow. The entire industry really started to take off. So fast forward to September of 2020, the Supreme Court actually struck down, and this is a long history in the courts. And this started 10 years ago. The horse industry went to the court system, actually to look at the constitutionality of this, look to make sure it was okay. This thing hung in the courts for 10 years. After 10 years, the Supreme Court reversed part of their decision and kicked it back to the legislature in September of 2020, saying that the legislature needed to make a ruling on this for the people of Kentucky. Started off an immediate, pretty scary chain of events. We saw construction at Turfway Park actually come to a halt, and we were faced with losing year-round racing, which would have, for little guys like me in this industry, it would have been absolutely, it would have cut us pretty hard. And let me add in there too, that in that 10 years, We had $1 billion, that's $1 billion with a B, $1 billion worth of infrastructure were put into these HHR facilities. And we have 1,400 people directly employed by them. So it wasn't like this was some, ship passing through the night. I mean, this was very well established, very well moving, proven that it's helping the horse industry. And that's how this all came about to play during this legislative session. Senator John Schickel started it over in the Senate. And quite simply, it is just a definition of pari-mutuel wagering, nothing more, nothing less. It was quite a heavy load as you get farther and farther out from central Kentucky. The horse industry's less and less respected, I think would be the right word. And we really had to show people how that horse industry affects everyone. There's 60,000 families involved with this industry, but it goes farther than that. This goes to the farmers that are producing our hay and straw. It goes to the corn farmers growing corn. It's going into our horse feed, the oats. It's going into the wood chips, the shavings, the barn builders, the blacksmith, the veterinarians. I mean, this is quite an expansive industry. And if we'd have seen HHR fail, you'd have seen an immediate trickle, not just with your HHR jobs that we lost at Red Mile facility, the 225 jobs there that were immediately lost, then the 1,400 jobs with HHR around the state, and then you would have seen it, with the rest of the industry, the trickle would have started, and as the horses exited, so too would have the jobs. So very, very important legislation, crucial to our industry. There's so many people that put in such hard work on this, from the speaker to Representative Koenig to Damon Thayer to Senator John Schickel. Chamber was a huge help in driving this, and Elizabeth Jensen and Keith, and so many people and groups to thank for helping get this key legislation passed this year.
Well, we appreciate the leadership, and I can tell you, you became a household name, at least in the circles I run, because of the leadership role that you played. And also, I know you're extremely busy today. You got the work outfit on, and so we wish you well in your day job as well, but also thank you for the time you put into the legislative work. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on here this morning.
Good overview. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back to introduce our next key presenter. Stay tuned. It's a pleasure to introduce Lourdes Baez. She's the Assistant Vice President of Government Relations for Baptist Health, one of our major sponsors today. Lourdes, thank you very much. And she's going to introduce our next speaker. Lourdes.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Wanted to send our appreciation out to the Lexington community for supporting our hospital and our healthcare workers. It's been something we've never experienced before. So in terms of pandemic, and it's so good to have the community behind us on this. But shifting gears a bit, very happy to introduce Senator Chris McDaniel. He is the chairman of the Senate Appropriations and Revenue Committee. He became a senator in 2013 and represents the best part of Kenton County. Before that, he is a graduate of the Citadel. He served our country, and for which I am very grateful for, and we all are. But just wanted to throw in a little bit of a personal anecdote. I was working in the Senate when Senator McDaniel came, and I wanted to let everyone know that a lot of times you say, oh, well, it's a politician, and he says different things. And I can tell you that I have been in conversations that are very personal and private and, with the Senate business. And he is the same exact person in private than he is in public. And he is a small business owner. He understands the concerns, and he's not afraid of pushing back. Thank you for your support on Senate Bill 5, Senator McDaniel. And you can take it away.
All right. Very good. Well, thanks, Lourdes. Appreciate it. And, thanks so much for all the great work that you did there in the Senate with us, and now on behalf of Baptist. And thank you to everybody today who's joined in. Hopefully you're able to find yourself someplace safe and warm today. Certainly we have more than a few of our fellow Kentuckians who are not enjoying that luxury that we all take for granted so regularly. And importantly, the folks that we don't think about, the plow drivers, the linemen, those folks who really day in and day out are delivering an ability to all of us to live in a very, very comfortable manner. So thank you to them. So to talk a bit about the Commonwealth's budget today, we're in a very unique situation. Unique historically in that the Commonwealth writes a biennial budget. But last year with the pandemic, that simply was not possible. We really, by March of last year, had no idea where the economy was headed, whether there would be stimulus money, how employment would work, how bad the virus would get. There were just so many variables. The health folks couldn't tell us where things were going to head, nor could the finance people tell us, because they were counting on those health answers. So there was a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And so in a very unprecedented manner, for the first time ever, we filed a one-year budget. And we wrote it in a very, very, very conservative manner, fearing the worst on the tax revenues for the Commonwealth. As things have unfolded, clearly we've seen several rounds of stimulus, either direct injections, pandemic unemployment insurance benefits, extended unemployment benefits, things of that nature, that have really had a different effect than we necessarily expected right off the gate, which was the nature of the unemployment benefits allowed for higher withholdings than expected. And as people were staying home, and we had worked diligently several years ago on streamlined sales tax and marketplace fairness, our online sales tax collections held very, very, very strong. Now, corporate and LLET filings were down pretty dramatically, but it was more than offset by the personal side of the way this worked out. So going into this year, we have a surplus that was not necessarily expected. I think that we all have to continue to be cautious in the approach that we take as we move forward in this budgeting process, because there is no guarantee that everything will go perfectly with the recovery. And so I think that what you will see will largely reflect the idea that rather than trying to write a brand new one-year budget, we will view this more as a continuation of last year's budget, and with the optimism that we will see things return quicker and a sense of normalcy begin to set back in to our economy as a whole. So as we approach the budget, some of the big variables that we have to look at, first of all, pensions continues to be there and continues to be a major issue. The Commonwealth's pensions, particularly the teachers' retirement system, are showing signs of great strain. The other systems, while not in as good of financial shape now, are on a far better trajectory than the teachers' pension system is. They're going through an experience study right now that we expect the results from over the summertime, and anticipate that they will request even more money beyond the $500 million extra dollars that they're getting each year right now be injected into their system. The other uncertainty that we have right now is the next round of coronavirus relief money. We really don't know exactly where we're going to end up with all of that. We do know that we'll probably be pushing close to $1 billion new dollars through the Kentucky Department of Education, and several hundred million more, if not billions more, through other aspects of government. We're not sure exactly where that will land yet, simply because it's not been finalized, but it does look like there will be additional funds coming from those sources. So as we draft the budget and as you see it come out next year, I think you can largely expect to see a very similar budget to the one this year. Now, to switch sides, for the Senate, I oversee the writing of the budget, but I also oversee the revenue bill and tax measures. I think the biggest thing everyone on here is probably thinking about is the deductibility or not of PPP proceeds. As a lot of you know, when the PPP money first came out in the first round, it was billed from the federal government as a money that would be forgiven and untaxed. The IRS later ruled that while it would be untaxed, you could not deduct the expenses associated with the forgiven note. The second round of the CARES Act funding repealed that particular ruling from the IRS, confirming that for federal purposes, expenses affiliated with forgiven debt are deductible. However, the federal tax code and the Commonwealth's tax code do not always align. And right now, Governor Beshear's administration has interpreted the nature of the code to mean that that expenses are not deductible on forgiven debt. We've not had any particular communication from revenue on that issue as of yet, but I know that the members of the General Assembly are largely aware of the issue and working through the machinations on it. So that will be the biggest thing that we deal with on the revenue side as we advance through this process. So I could go into more depth on things. That's really the 30,000 foot view of the process, the budget, and what we're dealing with. So, I'll stop there. Bob, I think you may have some questions, or others may have questions, and I'm happy to take those.
I do. Thank you very much. And some of these things you may have touched on, but maybe we get in a little bit deeper conversation. But I do want to go back to the PPP loan tax question. And we do hear a lot from our members that that's an issue. These were the businesses that needed the money the most. This is what they're hanging on to. And I know their concern of then being taxed on it makes it that much more difficult. So thank you for staying very focused on that issue. The Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, will the budget add additional funding to the trust fund to help employers avoid increased assessments?
I don't know for sure that the budget will or won't add money there. I know it's another area where we are very familiar with the concern. Unemployment may be the biggest disaster in all of this. Both the expansion of benefits to folks who simply weren't eligible as we went through the pandemic, the opening of the portal to folks who had never paid in, benefits that were paid out and are now having to be clawed back. It's just been an unmitigated disaster that was not handled well. And then the biggest impact to business, like you say, is the fact that the trust fund balance is absolutely depleted. And in addition to that, we've got, I think, north of $600 million at this point of executed federal borrowing to fill those holes that will have to be paid back. So to that end, I know it's in the conversation. I'm not going to guarantee that there will be money in there or not, but it's another thing that we are very acutely aware needs to be addressed.
Another area would be education funding, K through 12 and higher education. I do appreciate you're not avoiding commenting on, not that you would avoid, you never do. You're always very direct, but on the pension issue, which we know is tough, but getting back on education funding, the K-12 and higher education, do you see any more funding in those areas?
Well, sure. I mean, first thing we've got to remember is the amount of federal funds being pumped through those areas is absolutely astronomical. It's beyond anything that the Commonwealth could do to necessarily be impactful. I can tell you this, I think the members of the General Assembly will roundly stand opposed to giving another dime to schools that don't have children in the schools. It's absolutely inexcusable and goes against any level of science and public policy recommendation for children to not be in schools right now. It's clear if you look at transmission rates, if you look at the ability to protect teachers and children, and if you look at the whole picture, now understanding the actual nature of this virus, kids not being in schools has a far more negative overall societal impact than the risks posed by them being there. So I would say that if there are additional funds that flow from the state, people should expect that those funds will necessarily be attached to children being in schools in person.
One of the things we also found in 2020 was in some areas of all of our regions across the Commonwealth and quite frankly across the U.S., where broadband capacity was just not there. And we're very fortunate with our university system here, in particular UK, but Transy and BCTC and others in the region, that we have a bigger, as I always say, a bigger tube coming in with more capacity. And that helps us in our trade in business and in the future of business and trade. But in the rural areas and many pockets around the Commonwealth, even in the smaller communities, broadband capacity is a real issue. So 2020 kind of showed how naked we could be in some areas, but for future success, that's going to have to be an area we invest more in to have a better capacity. Any thoughts, discussions on that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And, Representative Phil Pratt has a great bill that kind of appropriately aligns that investment between the Kentucky Department of Agriculture and USDA, which is where a lot of those federal funds are flowing through. So we're working right now to understand exactly the nature of the federal programs, federal funds, and look forward to Commissioner Quarles in his work on trying to help service those underserviced areas right now. So yes, that's one of those areas where, like I had said earlier, we're really trying to get our arms around exactly what the feds are doing. We want to make sure that the dollars we put in are invested in a way that will be meaningful, not merely duplicating something that the feds are already doing.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Andy Johnson just sent me a note. When do you expect to see a budget out of conference committees?
Before March 30th.
So so we're kind of in the middle of the process now. Can you kind of, for all of our listeners, can you kind of explain kind of where we go from here through the end of the year and kind of map out the different things that have to happen? How the process works?
You're referring specifically to the budgeting process?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, so we're basically in a conference committee right now, and that means that House negotiators and Senate negotiators will be meeting to work through differences in the proposal. Clearly, the bill that we passed were basically shells designed to get us into conference, knowing that we had to go there. We will continue to work and negotiate that. And once it comes out, ideally, we can secure a majority of votes in both of the chambers to go ahead and finalize that document. I would anticipate you'll see it out in the next couple of weeks, top end, and ready for movement, because we will certainly preserve our ability to override any vetoes the governor may have.
Well, I know you're one of the key folks behind the scenes, so it's probably not fair to ask the question of with your crystal ball, because I think you know more of where things are at and not. But what issues do you see coming out? Do you think that there's going to be a general agreement on that will pass this session?
You mean specifically related to the budget, or just in general?
In general. I'm sorry. Yeah, in general.
I'd put pretty good odds on historic horse wagering at this point. But beyond that, I think that you'll continue to see efforts to get children back in school where they belong. I think that you will continue to see efforts to push back on a lot of the executive orders at this point in time, and to provide in the future more transparency and accountability from the legislative branch of government. And the fact is, we are the local closest elected official to the people, and the lack of involvement between the executive and legislative branch throughout this was absolutely stunning to me. And frankly, it's kind of like I've mentioned to a lot of people. We may have gone down, had the governor's folks present a fact set and come to the exact same conclusions, and then been able to go home and communicate why to people. But when you exclude 138 members of the General Assembly from all the decision-making communications process, you end up with a group that's fairly dissatisfied, if for no other reason than we have 110,000 constituents who come to us, restaurant owners, daycare center owners, medical service providers, who are fighting for their financial lives, fighting to do the basic things that provide for their families. And they can get no satisfaction, no resolution to their issues. And so, I think you will see an ongoing push to bring more accountability during state of emergencies in the future.
So before I ask you for any closing comments, one of the issues as we look forward to is kind of getting back into that discussion of tax reform, especially as we exit this, so that business here in Kentucky additionally can stay competitive globally. Any thoughts on that, where we'll pick that back up and go forward on? Again, I know all the focus has had to be on the COVID-19 and now in the distribution of vaccination process, but do you see a lot of discussion in the upcoming sessions on tax reform?
Absolutely, and they still go on even to this day. Tax reform has and will continue to be a major priority. We took a big bite off 3 years ago. We took another small bite off about 2 years ago. We'll continue to do that, because we cannot pretend that Kentucky exists on an island where we can just tax our way to prosperity. And there are, plenty of people who just want to wave the white flag and say, government's got to have more revenue and you're going to have to raise taxes and you're going to have to do this and do that. And the fact is, we don't need to raise taxes. We need to grow the economy. If we grow the economy with more of a consumption-based tax code versus a production-based tax code, we will attract and retain high-quality employers. Those employers will bring high-quality jobs. High-quality jobs pay better wages, on and on and on and on and on. Yeah. It's a cycle. Like anything you do in life and business and in your family, you can cycle up and you can cycle down. And a competitive tax code is the number one way to cycle up. A competitive tax code, good infrastructure, well-educated workforce, and a friendly regulatory environment. Those are the things that businesses need to succeed. And if businesses can come and businesses can succeed, they can offer jobs and opportunities to people to succeed and thrive on an individual level. So you'll see us continue to push in that regard.
Well, as I always say, the states around us aren't waiting for Kentucky's next move. And thank you for leadership like yourself and others for constantly staying vigilant in making us more competitive, because we operate in a global environment just like most of the Commonwealth does as well. Closing thoughts. I know we appreciate your time a lot, but any thoughts to kind of wrap this up?
No, I think the biggest thing would be thank you to all of you guys for taking your time, for staying engaged. The fact is, we have the most wonderful form of government ever known to man. And it doesn't work if good people don't stay engaged. And we will not always agree on everything. And I completely understand that. But we have to have that free exchange of ideas. When we allow things to stagnate, when we allow individuals to not fully participate in the democracy, you begin to see the decline. And I don't want to see that. I still will always believe that if you want a place to be free, if you want a place to succeed, the best economic model, the best political model exists right here in the United States. And I think Kentucky is a fine place for folks to live, for folks to play, for folks to do business. And it's because of your engagement that happens. And lastly, think about your linemen today. They're out there. It's cold. It's brutal. They're up in the air. The wind is blowing, but they're doing everything that they can. So show some gratitude to those folks for what it is that they're doing. And once again, thank you guys all for your time.
Well said. Thank you very much. Be safe.
All right. You guys too. Take care now.
Thank you. All right. I think we've got a few minutes here before our next presenter. So please stay tuned and we'll be back at 10:30. Welcome back. Thank you very much for those of you who have stayed online, which is the overwhelming majority, to round out this morning's program. You know, each year we put together a legislative day for Central Kentucky, and we think it's very important that we not only talk a lot inside Central Kentucky about our issues and our needs, but that we also go and we connect with key leaders and find out where they're at, let them know our thoughts, and make sausage that way. And that's probably a kind way of saying how legislation often gets made. But we're going to round out today with somebody that I think here in Central Kentucky we all know, Rocky Adkins, Senior Advisor to Governor Andy Beshear. And we want to get his crystal ball on some issues, but to also find out some of his thoughts on some of the key issues. So, Rocky, I can turn it over to you to make some introductory comments, and then I'm going to guess, like most other speakers, they pretty much hit on most of the things we're thinking. So I'll turn it over to you for some comments.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me today. It's good to be back with you, even though it's kind of in unusual circumstances, but it's the way we've got to do things during COVID-19. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and when we think there's not another punch that can be thrown, the weather steps in. And the governor and I flew to Eastern Kentucky yesterday to kind of look at the devastation and thousands of people that are without electricity. So please keep those folks close in your thoughts and prayers. A lot of work going on to try to get things restored. Most of you know me. I'm the senior advisor to Governor Beshear. I'm Rocky Adkins, served in the legislature for 33 years, practically in every position that you could serve in, and now serving in this new role as a senior advisor. Of course, the session is going on, and it's unusual from several different ways, but especially one. You all know on March 6th of last year is when we had our first case of COVID-19. And from there, the legislature was in session. It was a budget session, a full-blown budget session to pass a 2-year budget. That didn't happen. A 1-year budget was passed, and I think that was a good decision that was made. So the governor has presented a budget, a 1-year budget to the legislature for them to look at, to take into consideration. And we're very proud of the budget that we submitted to the legislature. We believe that it is fiscally conservative. We believe it's responsible, but we think it's bold as well. And it addresses some issues in the budget with one-time money that we received through the CARES Act, and it was one-time money that was spent basically on one-time expenditures. So the legislature does have the budget. We're not hearing a lot back on negotiations between the House and the Senate, but we got the budget to the legislature early in the first week of the session. I think on the third day, matter of fact, of the session, when the governor gave his State of the Commonwealth and budget address together. We're proud of this budget because we're taking some one-time money and addressing some of the things that I know you're concerned about. $240 million of one-time money for small business relief and individual relief, along with our nonprofits. $220 million of that for small business relief, $20 million for our nonprofits that to try to bring some relief through these very unusual times and challenges that we faced. $253 million of one-time money to pay down the loan. That money will go to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund to help pay down that loan from the federal government. And so in this budget, $253 million of one-time money to help address that issue as well. On the other side, to be bold, you know, we've got $50 million of one-time money for broadband expansion to try to get broadband interconnect to every household across Kentucky. And I think we see that from an education standpoint, from a business standpoint. Everything we do today now because of the last year is showing how important that technology really is, and to have, you know, high-speed broadband all across Kentucky. This $50 million hopefully will help draw down some of that federal CARES Act that's been passed for broadband alone, and we believe that will be a leverage to help us do that. $100 million to go into school facility construction of some of the Category 5 schools, which are the worst of the worst facilities, not what's going on inside, but the facility itself, to take and invest that, create jobs, upgrade the building infrastructure of our education system, those buildings across Kentucky. The governor created a new pool of money within the Economic Development Cabinet, and it is one-time money, but it's $22 million to look at emerging industries, industries that are creating the new economy, industries that are creating new jobs, emerging industries that we're looking to try to attract to Kentucky or help expand here in Kentucky with the new way of the future. Just an example of one of those. A company like App Harvest, the agri-tech industry, which we believe has unbelievable potential, not only from what Jonathan Webb has done to build a 60-acre greenhouse and broken ground on 2 others in Richmond and one in Berea, but his facility that's finished in Moorhead, creating over 300 jobs, $120 million investment, has gone public and raised $1 billion. Those type of emerging industries, the technology, the innovation, creating jobs in rural parts of the state to urban parts of the state, attracting the research and development that's going to be so critical as we move forward. So we're proud of that. The Budget Reserve Trust Fund in this budget has a historic amount in the Budget Reserve Trust Fund, $465 million in the Budget Reserve Trust Fund. We believe that's smart. It's 4.7% of the total budget for the 1 year. We're also encouraged, if I could just real quick, the receipts that are coming into the Commonwealth of Kentucky are really surprising in a very positive way. We are actually, for the first quarter, or first 2 quarters, from July the 1st to the end of December, up 5.7% compared to the 2 quarters before COVID hit of a year ago. So we're encouraged by that. The largest amount of tax collection in the history of the Commonwealth, as far as sales tax, happened in December until January came and we broke that largest amount of tax collection, sales tax collection in the month of January. So we are really surprised that the economy, the spending of money, what's coming to the state as receipts, having a actual $137 million estimated above what the consensus forecasting group actually brought forth and estimated. We're above that, and our budget director, John Hicks, who many of you probably know, is very surprised, and I am as well, at the receipts coming into the Commonwealth of Kentucky in a very, very positive manner. Fully fund education at every level. We give increase in the funding of elementary, secondary, and higher ed. And we also basically in this budget fully fund the pension systems of state employees and retired teachers and the quasi-governments as well. So we believe this is a very responsible budget. We think it's a very balanced budget. And we think that while we're being conservative because of where we are today and where we may be in the future, we're chasing still more CARES Act money that is coming from the federal government. And we are pushing hard for an infrastructure piece of legislation at the federal level as well. So that's kind of an overview of what we're doing while we're focused on trying to get through COVID-19 and trying to get through this weather we're having. We're trying to stay focused on other things as well, the legislative session, the economy, getting people back to work, trying to get the vaccine out, trying to get an infrastructure to make all of that happen. So every day is pretty focused, and we're trying our best to make sure that we keep Kentucky on a very positive track, and that as we come out of COVID-19, that we have built a very, I think, a very bright future to be able to take advantage of a post-COVID economy that Kentuckians will be proud of. So Bob, I will stop there and try to answer any questions you may have, but it's good to be with everybody today. It's great to be this way. If this is the way we have to do it for now, that's fine with me. We'll get back to some normalcy in the very, very near future.
Thank you. Good summation, good description of where we're at. We've heard some similar comments earlier this morning from other leaders. As you would guess, we all know that herd immunity is kind of where we got to be. And so I know that getting the vaccine rolled out as far and wide as we can across the nation and the world, but here in Kentucky in particular, I know that we've kind of been struggling with vaccination supply. And just curious, with the new Biden administration, if the governor is able to get more emphasis placed on getting more of the vials into Kentucky. And then we've got a few other questions kind of dealing with the COVID-19.
Well, I think you've heard the governor announce that we are getting increased supplies under the Biden administration. I think now we've had 3 announcements of increase of supply coming into Kentucky. And when that happens, that allows us to open more vaccination centers throughout Kentucky, from urban areas to rural areas. A name that you all know very well, former mayor there in Lexington, Jim Gray, has kind of been put as the coordinator of setting up the infrastructure, the sites, the locations where the vaccine will be going, and the places that we will publicize heavily to try to make sure people get to those locations. There is challenges from very rural areas to the urban areas, and trying to get those distribution places from the very more multi-county or regional sites to more down to individual sites. And the more supply we get, the better we're going to be able to do that. We're encouraged as I speak to you today about how that is starting to come together. The supply continues to increase. And the governor will be traveling tomorrow to open up 2 more regional sites. I'm not going to get out in front of him, but he'll be announcing those tomorrow and actually doing it from the actual sites of where those locations will be. So we feel good how it's coming together. We're encouraging in every shape, form, and fashion we can for people to get their vaccination, to be patient for their turn to come to do so. But we want to make sure that we continue to push for that supply to be increased. And we're very appreciative of where we are today as far as that increase from the Biden administration. And as that increase comes, we believe we've got the network set up through Jim Gray, who is coordinating, through Dr. Stack and others, to implement that quickly throughout Kentucky to make sure the vaccination of the different groups that have been publicized happen, and we get those vaccinations in the arms of people across Kentucky.
Well, I know, as I said, the herd immunity aspect is what we've got to get to, and so getting a more supply in and then getting it out. I know on Monday we have a session, and Secretary Gray had to just step out. He's trying to find another person to fill in, but we're going to talk more about the distribution issue. So for all of our listeners here, I would say stay tuned to us on Monday for that discussion. Also, I know in the business community, there's that concern on the UI Trust Fund and just the repayment of that. Do you see more funds coming? Again, I talked about the relationship between Governor Beshear and President Biden and his administration. Do you see more funds coming in to help us take the pressure off of that?
We do, and I think you see the governor's commitment in this recommendation that he's made of $253 million of the CARES Act that we've already received to go into the unemployment insurance trust fund. We are pushing, yes, for that specifically, to be able to get more of those funds into Kentucky, to get the CARES Act money to use in different things. But this is a high priority for the governor to make sure that, that we can help pay down the loan with the CARES Act money as it comes. That is one of the priorities. Of course, state stabilization, local government stabilization is being talked about and being moved through the congressional compromise and process as we sit here today. So yes, it's a very high priority for the governor to use those funds, especially one-time monies in those areas, to make sure that we can address not only trying to get unemployment insurance claims out to people, but to be able to pay down that loan as we go. And I think $253 million is a commitment that he has shown that he wants to continue. So to answer your question specifically, yes, we are making that request, and we're making that push from here at the governor's office through the president and through our congressional leaders as well.
Another issue we hear talked about and have heard talked about a lot is the COVID-19 liability protections for business, for schools, and healthcare. I know a lot of people thought it was just business pushing that initially, but it's not. It's our education system and our healthcare system as well. And we're not talking about the bad actors here, people who have been negligent. If they've done that, then they should be prosecuted. But we're talking about in general for businesses who have done everything possible to help their workforce. Do you see a liability protections bill coming out? And if so, do you see, at least what you see coming out, with the governor's support?
Well, we don't know exactly what will come out. I know that we've had a discussion or two on the bill. Of course, it's not made it completely through the process, as you know, Bob. We don't know what changes will be made yet, so it's hard for me to speak exactly what the governor will do or won't do. But I know it's something that is on the radar, and it's something that we're staying in very close contact as it does move through the process. And I would just say, until it's finalized exactly what's in the bill, it's hard for me to speak on the specifics. It would seem that there's still some discussion going on with that legislation, with it still kind of being a part of the dialogue that's taking place between the House and the Senate. But it is definitely one that we are looking at seriously, and the consideration of whether the governor will sign, won't sign, veto, all of those, we'll take that into consideration as the bill makes its way through and it's finalized by the legislature.
I know we're getting close to the wrap-up time here, and to respect your time. This morning, we've talked a lot about transportation funding, and specifically, I think a lot of our listeners and our member businesses have heard us talk a lot about the two bridges, the Brent Spence Bridge, the I-69 bridge. What won't surprise you is the fact that we all know in our region here, we have a huge need for infrastructure improvement, road improvement. But I think what might surprise a lot of people, maybe not so much on the Brent Spence Bridge, is that so much of the U.S. GDP drives across that in an annual basis. But that's a very significant roadway for us, for, as you would guess, just one industry, the automotive industry. But again, it's an artery. The I-69 bridge kind of surprises people, but for our businesses here, that's really very important as well. Well, those two bridges alone are going to would take an awful lot of money. So that's going to, at some point in time, we're going to have to look at upping the gas tax, and with all the dynamics there. Do you see, is the governor advocating for a transportation fund increase? And what would be your thoughts in general on how we would go forward putting that together?
Well, what I'll tell you is I've been kind of helping lead discussions on that with Secretary Gray and Mike Hancock, and putting together a proposal that hopefully would bring bipartisan support. The governor has made it very clear that he believes that we do need to enhance transportation budget funding. He's made that very clear. He spoke to your all's group and said, the transportation budget itself needs to be enhanced. It needs to be basically made more sturdy. We see it as a jobs bill, an economic development bill. Infrastructure is so critical to Kentucky, where we're located. So the governor has made it very clear that he supports enhancing the transportation budget so we can basically take care of what we got, but build on to those very major projects that you just mentioned. The governor has said that he wants two things to happen, that he's for it. He believes it needs to happen. The time is right for it, just from the jobs, economic development, but also keeping us competitive on the economic development side and the job side to be able to recruit and keep what we've got. But the governor wants to make sure that the bill is fair, and he wants to make sure that it's bipartisan. And I've made very clear to legislative leadership, the governor, when you tell him where your votes are and exactly the proposal, that he is ready to have that discussion and step out in a bipartisan way and endorse transportation funding, transportation enhancement, and that infrastructure that is needed so bad in Kentucky. The other part of that question is also infrastructure of broadband. I mean, we're just not talking about roads and bridges here. We're talking about the infrastructure that really needs to happen here in Kentucky. We need to make sure that we step up and have the skin in the game that we need, because I'm hearing more and more talk at the federal level about a possible infrastructure bill as well. And Kentucky needs to be well positioned to take advantage of that. I don't know what it will look like. I don't know what it will say, but I do believe that states that have shown that they're willing to make more investments, willing to, through their legislature and governors, take this infrastructure package and the funding of it seriously. The governor has made it very clear to every group I've heard him speak to the CAECO, the County Judges Association, to the League of Cities, to every chamber I have heard him talk to. He has always said that transportation funding is critical. I'm for it. We need to step up. I just want it to be fair, and I want it to be bipartisan. So we're leading those discussions, and we hope that something will happen this session. And we'll continue that conversation as we go through these next days of session, which the legislature will start back next week. And they've been out this week because of weather. So, Bob, to say yes, we're looking at it very positively, and we hope we can help make it happen.
Well, and I'm glad to hear you comment on the broadband piece. We've talked a lot about that this morning, too. Globally, people woke up and realized how naked we were not to have the infrastructure that is absolutely essential for business, has been for a while, but now more so than ever, just as if this event would not be able to take place without it. So we appreciate your support of that. I know you've got to go. We appreciate your time and also your availability. Whenever I call, man, it's just like response is fast, and we appreciate it.
I appreciate that. I just want to mention in the budget, $50 million for broadband. It's critical. Help us advocate with the legislature to leave that in. It will help us draw down those federal dollars that have been set aside. Some of those federal dollars through a competitive application have already come to some of our private sector vendors out there to start implementing broadband. It's critical. So help us support that. And the $22 million for emerging industries, we believe that's critically important for all of Kentucky, and we're going to advocate hard for that as we go through these next days of session.
Well, thank you for your support of App Harvest. Great company with a great upside and a future. And going on the broadband, we got to keep we've got those without, and that's just unacceptable. But we
Great.
also can't take our eyes off the needle now with how we keep advancing that technology. Even though we may have a lot more than others here in Fayette County and a few of the counties around us, that game, the world's not going to wait for Kentucky. We got to be the leaders, and we will be.
Very true. Bob, I look forward to working with you and your business community there in Fayette County, Central Kentucky, Lexington. I want everyone to know that's listening that if there's something I can do to help you navigate the system of state government, an issue that you may have out there that you need to know who the right person to contact, or me make a contact to help you in some shape, form, or fashion, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Bob and Andy both know how to reach me. I'm glad to help you any way I can. Thank you for your resilience. Thank you for the economic growth that we're seeing in Central Kentucky, and whatever we can do to be a partner in that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and see if I can help in some shape, form, or fashion in the area of state government or any place else. We look forward to working with you from here in the governor's office, and Governor Beshear is very centered in on how we keep a strong economy, grow the economy, and create new jobs as we move forward and retain the jobs that we have here today. So Bob, anytime, please reach out. I'm glad to work with you in any way. Have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you, and you be safe.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Well, as we come to a close here, I want to thank all the speakers and everyone, all the participants who joined in to make this an important day, and to stay on the cutting edge of where we're at. Let your voice be heard. Please, we heard that a number of times, just how I remember when I worked in government years ago, we would on major bills get maybe 1 or 2 notes or messages, and we were shocked. And the power of your phone call, your letter, your email, your text, it is beyond belief. So please stay active, and especially now, because we're nearing that session when a lot of the bills are going to be finalized and then sent on, hopefully for passage. Again, those that we like for passage with the governor. In particular, I want to thank our sponsors, Charter Communications, Baptist Health, and AT&T.